I belong to this small club of security experts worldwide, and we every now and then have these nightmare scenario sessions where we gather together and we think about the worst case scenarios. Like, what could happen? With current technology, what's the worst the attackers could do? And the one promise we always give to each other is that we don't talk about the nightmare scenarios to outsiders, because we don't want to give ideas to the bad guys. So let me just say that there are bad things that could happen. Internet could be taken down. There are real-world things, real-world attacks that current technology would enable, but I don't want to go into details.
De piloot van deze drone is Mikko Hyppönen, cybersecurity-expert. 30 jaar lang werkte hij op de cutting edge van cybersecurity en hielp de grootste bedrijven ter wereld om hun netwerken te beschermen tegen hackers en cybercriminelen. Tot die ene dag in 2025, toen hij zijn leven omgooide.
When I announced in the summer of 2025 that I will no longer be working for a cybersecurity company, but I will be joining a defense contractor instead, a lot of people asked me, why Mikko? Why are you making this shift? And the answer is very simple. There's a war in Europe, and I think it's sort of my duty to apply the skills I've gathered to fight the most pressing problem in Ukraine, which is the drone problem. So the work I did in cyber was all about gathering samples of new attacks, figuring out how they work. Here's a new malware, here's a new exploit. Then analyzing how they work and building detection. So it was a game of cat and mouse. And that's exactly what I'm doing here for drone defense, except it's not programs and binary code, it's radio transmissions coming from drones.
Van cybersecurity naar fulltime dronebestrijding. Het belangrijkste product van Mikko's bedrijf heet AirFence, een mobiel systeem dat alle drones in de buurt moet detecteren.
So that's me, right? That's my DJI Mini 3. And you can see the track that I was flying just over there. So we can see that the pilot is over there with the remote control. That's the track of the drone that it flew. And then we can see the actual location of the drone over there. And we get all the details of the drone. So the drone type, the height of the drone, the device ID, motors are on and it's flying right now. And if it's a problematic drone, let's say it's too close to an airport, it doesn't really matter where the drone is. It does matter where the remote control is. You can send the cops to talk with the guy who's flying the drone. That's what you really want to do. That will stop the problem much better than trying to disrupt the drone itself or to shoot down the drone. Find the guy, talk to the guy. That's a good solution.
What would you suggest telling him? He's right next to you.
What the hell are you doing? Yes, I'm a Finn. We are 2 hours away from the Russian border, 2 hours away from the biggest country on the planet. A very unpredictable country that has attacked their neighbors many times, including us here in Finland. Both my grandfathers fought the Russians. I've done my military service in the 1980s, but then I've been going back regularly for military refreshers. And whenever I go back to my military refreshers, they don't give me a gun anymore, they give me a computer. I think I'm much more destructive with a computer than with a gun. The world has completely changed over the decades I've worked in technology. A couple of years ago I was speaking in a conference and I mentioned on stage that, if it's smart, it's vulnerable. And that stuck. Eventually people started calling it the Hyppönen law. And it's a very pessimistic law, but it's also true. So for example, my watch. This here is a 25-year-old mechanical Omega watch. How do you hack this watch? Well, you don't. There's no chips, there's no Wi-Fi, there's no Bluetooth, there's no connectivity. It's unhackable. It's not smart. Then when you look at Android or Apple watches, they might be very safe by design, but they are running code. They are online. And if that's true, they can always be hacked. The largest botnets in the world 5-10 years ago were networks of infected computers, typically Windows computers. Today, the largest botnets are networks of infected doorbells and printers and home routers and security cameras, microwave ovens. All of these things have become computers. All of them are going online, and in many cases, they are much easier to hack than traditional computers.
Introducing Ring Always Home Cam. Yeah, it's a camera that flies.
What?
So cyber has changed from an only online thing into something very concrete. And that means that cyber attacks can today affect the real world.
Now we are getting close to the city of Hyrylä, and this is the area where I grew up. If we take the next left, we'll see my old school, which is the place where I touched a computer for the first time in my life. In that yellow building right over there. And that building, that wing of that building right there on the second floor, behind those windows, they had the computer class, which had 4 Nokia-made Micro Mikko 1 computers running CP/M as the operating system. That's the first computer I ever touched. That's the first computer I ever programmed. That's the beginning for me, for everything I've done during my life.
An easy solution for many of the problems we have with connected devices in critical places like factories or critical infrastructure is to just keep it offline. Don't put it on the public internet. And that sounds easy to do, and it's surprisingly hard to do in practice. The typical story is that originally, years ago, it was offline, but then as time passed, something changed. A reconfiguration. A company bought another company and connected the networks. Someone added a remote working facility so they could work remotely during the pandemic. And suddenly, the things you thought are offline, off the grid, off the internet, are actually exposed to the internet. More and more of our critical infrastructure is part of the global grid, which brings us great benefits, but also exposes us to completely new kinds of risks.
If you look at a country like the Netherlands, what would be ways that you could disrupt our society?
Dams, obvious target for the Netherlands, but you could also cause power outages, you could disrupt distribution of food, you could control clean water. If people can't get water, it's very hard to continue our everyday lives. And you could potentially even have things like causing things to catch fire. Theoretically, you could have thousands of fires at the same time in different locations created by cyber attacks, which would be impossible for the responders to react to at the same time. So there's these nightmare scenarios that we can come up with when we realize that everything around us is being run by computers, which means if they get hacked, it starts to affect our real world very quickly.
This is 20-year-old drug dealer Dylan Earle from Leicestershire.
No! Stay still! Stay still! Okay.
Counter-terror police arrested him in a B&Q car park after he agreed to work as a hostile agent for the Russian state.
In Duitsland kennen ze het al langer. Er is een campagne daar gericht op jongeren. Kein wegwerfagent werden. Word geen wegwerpspion. En daar gaat het hier in Nederland vandaag ook over.
Dat gebeurde via de chat-app Telegram. Via die app kregen de jongens tegen betaling de opdracht om langs belangrijke gebouwen in Den Haag te lopen. Met een apparaatje dat kan inbreken op wifi. Bijvoorbeeld bij opsporingsorganisatie Europol en de Canadese ambassade.
When companies and organizations and public sector and infrastructure providers defend their networks, they traditionally worry about the foreign governments and foreign intelligence agencies. And that's the reason why some of these attacks have lately been using local people. So, for example, we know that Russian intelligence agents have recruited young people in European countries to take photos, to shoot video, to gain access to networks, to hook up to Wi-Fi systems. Even cases where they've hired people to burn down facilities, which we've seen, for example, here in Finland. So sabotage not done by foreigners, but by local people, typically very young people who get paid to do it. And this changes the defense quite a bit, because now you don't only have to worry about foreign entities, but also about local people. So this is the manufacturing department for air fence, which can be used to detect large drones already from 200 kilometers away.
And these are being used in Ukraine right now.
There's more than 100 of these in Ukraine right now.
With these cyber attacks becoming more physical, what dimension do drones actually add to the ability to threaten like physical infrastructure?
Well, these drones, they are computers themselves. The real innovation that really made this possible is that the batteries became light enough that you can actually fly these for extended periods of time. But you can add all kinds of functionality into these. You can have Wi-Fi sniffers inside a drone, and you can fly it next to an office building to connect to their network. Of course, you can use the cameras. This one has a 4K camera, shoots excellent pictures, which means you can shoot displays from an office through an office window by just flying close by. Drones can easily be used for disruption and to create chaos and maybe even panic. We've seen plenty of examples of that over the last years in Europe with drone sightings around military bases or airports.
Voor de tweede keer deze week wordt de luchthaven van Brussel gisteravond stilgelegd. Vliegtuigen mogen er niet landen en vertrekken. De reden? Onbekende drones in de buurt van het vliegveld.
De ene drone na de andere ontregelt het luchtruim in Europa. Deze week in België, in Brussel en in Luik. En in Gothenburg, Zweden, zijn gisteravond ook drones gezien. Dat gebeurt de laatste tijd vaker. En verschillende landen zeggen dat Rusland erachter zit.
So this here is one of our interceptor drones. This is the kind of drone you use to take down another drone. So this will fly 350 kilometers an hour and hit a drone in the air, taking it down.
Nu drones op, maar steeds vaker ook ver achter het slagveld gebruikt worden, zoekt Mikko's team ook constant naar nieuwe manieren om ze te bestrijden. Hun nieuwste concept: niet losverkochte anti-drone drones, maar een compleet anti-drone fabriekje in een container, overal ter wereld bezorgd op jouw gewenste adres.
And that's the container. This is our current prototype of the system we are developing. Just a standard shipping container. It can look like anything from the outside, but then inside is where the magic happens. That's where we set up everything. It's a drone factory built inside a container, which can then make dozens of these every single day, and you can have as many containers as you want. Because you don't want to manufacture and warehouse these. These get outdated fairly quickly. What you want to have is the capability to manufacture the kind of drones you need today. Obviously, this is still under construction, but that's what we're building. We're going to set up the printers for 3D manufacturing on the walls over there. And this setup is again a prototype for the system we are building for our container-sized factories. There would be 8, 12 or 16 printers inside one container. And we're right now printing fiber-strengthened plastic parts of interceptor drones. And we built them inside containers because then it's easy to ship them anywhere you want and it's easy to hide them. It's really easy to make a container look like nothing interesting at all. You have a rusty old container in the corner of a field. No one's going to think twice about it, but there's no way to know what's inside. A clever attacker would combine online attacks with real-world attacks. And real-world attacks, the lowest threshold to cross would be attacks like drone attacks, because you don't have to be physically on location. You don't have to send troops or traditional military anywhere, and you can already disrupt communication and you can disrupt traffic, like we've seen with the drone sightings around airports. So these new kinds of technologies, they lower the threshold for attacks. Cyber is being used because attribution is so hard. Drones are being used for the same reason. I've spent my life fighting problems created by technology revolutions. When internet became a thing, crime changed from a local problem into a global problem. I started analyzing malware in 1991. This is the time of floppy disks and viruses spreading when people were traveling carrying floppies on them. The real changes started happening around 1999, 2000, when we started finding first email worms, which were spreading on the internet using email attachments, including famous cases like I Love You, which was spreading in 2000. Around 2003, we found the first governmental cases. Initially, it was the Chinese spying with malware on European defense contractors, but eventually it became sort of like the norm, maybe culminating in 2010, when we found Stuxnet, which was an attack from the US government together with the Israelis targeting the nuclear enrichment systems of Iran. It would wait for you to connect your computer to a Siemens S7 PLC. These are the physical devices you use inside factories to control things like centrifuges, which Iranians were using to distill uranium gas into uranium. And then it would start changing the spinning frequencies of these centrifuges, making them catastrophically explode while they were spinning at very high speeds. And this is a software attack destroying physical things, potentially even lethal attacks. Like if there's humans close to these centrifuges as they explode, that's lethal. So that's basically the first time we humans made the jump where a malware attack or a cyber attack has the potential to kill. If the physicists of the world lost their innocence in 1945 when we invented the nuclear weapon, then software engineers lost their innocence in 2010 when Stuxnet for the first time was able to kill people with software attacks. And that's what it looks like when we are actually shipping our units to our customers. So I used to work in software where shipping a product meant that you would do something virtual. You hit a button and your software is published. And now when we work in physical environment, shipping means that we close these boxes and a shipping company picks them up and takes them to another country for a customer.
If we fast forward to 2026, if we think about how you can use all these modern technologies together, is there a specific operation that you think about?
Ukraine did an amazing operation in the summer of 2025 where they were hitting targets deep inside Russia with drones. This is the Operation Spiderweb. And this was 5 different targets, some of which were more than 4,000 kilometers inside of Russia. Military bases which Ukraine was targeting with drone strikes, where the drones didn't fly all the way from Ukraine, because they can't fly thousands of kilometers. They were put close to the targets in containers, driven there in trucks. Then these special containers opened up, the roof opens up and it starts flying out from the containers with dozens of these drones remotely controlled over the internet by pilots physically in Ukraine.
Вот он, коптер опять взлетел. Откуда взлетает, ничего не понятно, блядь. Вот он, клоун, блядь. Оба ни с того, ни с сего, сука. Оба! Вот дела, блядь. Ёб твою мать, до чего техника дошла.
And each one of these drones were carrying explosives with them, and they were targeting Russian bombers and fighter jets. And that's a great example of an asymmetric attack, because the price of one drone is a couple of hundred, couple of thousand euros. The price of a bomber jet is 100 million euros. And Operation Spiderweb was also pretty clever in the sense that you can ship these containers to anywhere on the planet. You can just hire a company to move your container, and the drivers have no idea what you're shifting. So it was actually, in many cases, Russian logistic companies with Russian drivers who were driving these containers filled with Ukrainian drones very close to the target that they were hitting. That's the benefit you get from a clever attack like this.
Is that what people in the hacker community call useful idiots?
I don't want to comment on that for a different reason, because I too often hear these sayings that user is the weakest link. Stupid user did stupid things. Stupid user opened an attachment. Stupid user clicked on a link. And it's almost too easy. It's like blaming the user for the problems that really probably are at a higher level in the whole system. Like if there's a link that the end user can never click on, why is the link on the user's desktop to begin with? We have already failed at many other levels if it goes to that level. And that means blaming the user is almost too easy. We should take the responsibility away from the places that can't handle the responsibility and put it where it belongs.
So in that sense, blaming these witless drivers who just delivered the cargo isn't good enough.
That's the wrong place to put the blame.
People should think about drone defense in airports and that kind of stuff is basically the mistake that the Russians made in that sense.
The most important thing for defending against drones is having visibility, knowing what's happening in your airspace, monitoring radio waves and monitoring radar. You need to have the visibility. That's where you start from.
Het zal steeds meer de norm worden voor overheden en beheerders van kwetsbare plekken. Zorgen dat je inzicht hebt in alle mogelijke radiosignalen van drones. Met de huidige drones is dat nog goed te doen, maar in het eeuwige kat-en-muisspel tussen aanvaller en verdediger wordt het ook steeds normaler dat drones helemaal geen signaal meer afgeven.
This is an interesting example. When you hear about fiber optic drones, that's what they look like. That's the fiber optic drone container. This contains 5 kilometers of fiber optic, which looks like this. And when it flies, it leaves these really tiny strands of glass fiber behind it, and that's how it's being controlled, which means it does not leave any kind of radio signal at all. You cannot detect these by looking at radio traffic. You cannot jam these with radio traffic. And it's quite clear that this is just a temporary stage. The next stage will be that there's no connection between the pilot and the drone at all, because there won't be a pilot. It's going to be AI.
Where does it all end, I think sometimes?
It will end up in a battlefield where machines will be fighting machines and humans are nowhere close. And is that better or worse than current wars? I don't know, but I guess I would prefer a war where machines fight machines over a war where humans fight machines. The main reason why we haven't seen more completely autonomous flying drones is that then you need quite a lot of computing power, which means you need a lot of electricity, which means you need a large battery, which is heavy. And a heavy battery is, it doesn't really add very well to a flying thing. But in a year, in 2, in 3 years, the electricity consumption and the battery technology will be so much better that this will become the norm. And then we really will have flying killer robots which operate completely autonomously, which nobody controls, which will decide by themselves who to kill and who not to kill. That's not too far away from some of the cyber attacks we've seen. Stuxnet didn't use artificial intelligence, but once it was created and let loose, it wasn't controlled by the creators anymore. It would autonomously find ways to gain access to where it was going and then operate once it reached a target. That's not too far away from what we're seeing with these drones today.
So we would have like computer viruses flying around us in the future.
Well, it's not really a computer virus flying around, but it's not too far off either.